After spending 15 years as an at-large councillor, Iain Angus is looking to transition to the mayor's office, entering this year's mayoral race. Iain, why did you decide to put your hat in the mayor's race?
Well, there were a couple of reasons. One, the position appeared to be vacant, that Mayor Hobbs had indicated he wasn't running again. And when I looked at the possible candidates who might run for mayor, I felt that I had much more experience than they did. I felt that I had a broader vision for the community, and that with my combined experience provincially, federally, and of course municipally, as well as being a municipal employee, I probably had the biggest grasp of the issues and the processes that we need to adhere to make the changes that we need.
What would you do differently in the mayor's role compared to as an at-large councillor?
Well, for one thing, the mayor is the leader of council. He or she is the chief spokesman for the community. He is the person who goes one-on-one with provincial cabinet ministers. And I think that my reputation, my style as non-confrontational will bode well for the community. I don't have a history with the current cabinet in any negative way, although I've met a number of them now, and I've known some of them for quite some time. So I think I have the ability to bridge this community to the provincial government for the issues that we identify as of our concern.
You mentioned you feel like you have a broader vision for the city than some of the other candidates that are running. If you can just take us through what you see for the city in the future.
Well, the challenge, and it's also an opportunity that we're facing, is that demographers have warned us that 2,000 people a year are going to be retiring. And they're not going to leave, at least not most of them, and well, some of them may leave during the winter, but they're going to remain here in Thunder Bay. So not only do we have to find new people to move to Thunder Bay to fill these positions, but we also will have to build more homes, more apartments, more condos, and that in turn will trigger growth in the economy. So we need to be strategic on how we deal with this. How do we get those people here? How do we make sure that all of the young Indigenous people who are coming up through their school systems get the training and education they need to fill the jobs that are going to exist? How do we bring back people who have left Thunder Bay for other opportunities to get them to return home? How do we bring in more immigrants? How do we bring in more refugees? Because 2,000 people a year is a pretty big number when it comes to attracting people to this community. So we're going to grow the community. And at the same time, we have to deal with some key issues: crime, racism, and our infrastructure. But combined, that new growth will help pay the bills.
How do you encourage that new growth, and how do you market Thunder Bay as the place for them to come?
We've actually had a group working on this for a couple of years now, and we've identified some of the barriers to that the federal and provincial governments have, not intentionally, but have accidentally put in place that makes it more difficult for us to attract certain people to fill certain occupations. And so we're working on that field. We have to sell our community as a great place to live, and certainly knocking on doors. I'm asking people the question, what do you like best? And it's everything between I love this city and nature and how welcoming it is. So we need to put that face on the web, which CEDC has already started doing, as well as getting the word out through Thunder Bay Multicultural Association and others.
Particularly with Indigenous people, Thunder Bay has far from the best reputation. How can the city move forward and become a more welcoming and inclusive place for Indigenous people?
Well, we must work closely with the Indigenous leadership to find the solutions that work. Although I'm pleased to say, and this is an old stat, that a few years ago there were 4,800 Aboriginal families in Thunder Bay. 48% of them owned their own home. So they're committed to this community, and they're part of the fabric, and we need to celebrate that, and we need to expand that, and we need to find solutions that deals with the more marginalized Indigenous people who are on the streets in Thunder Bay, to help them get into treatment, to deal with the underlying issues that are brought alcoholism about or drug addiction about, so that they can move on with their lives and be a part of the full society.
I know in the past councils have said that treating addictions and a lot of those social issues shouldn't be a municipal responsibility, it should fall on the province. With this current provincial government that's already moved aside from the previous decision to put a safe injection site in Thunder Bay, how can the city rely upon the province to pick up that responsibility?
Well, I think the reality is we can't. Although we will certainly do our best to convince the Ontario government of the needs of this community and their responsibility under the Constitution, which they like to brag about these days, that they have that responsibility and that here are the needs that we have. But at the end of the day, these are our citizens, whether they have been here for a day or for 10 years. Once they cross our boundaries, they're ours, and we have a responsibility to do what we can. And if that requires the city to take on some of the responsibilities of the province in order to make life better for those people, so be it.
So I guess what takes the hit then if you are picking up the responsibility for those social issues? Does that mean less spending for infrastructure?
No, because going back to my earlier comment about growing the community, the reality is the more homes that we have means the more property taxes that are being paid on existing infrastructure. So we spread the cost of all of these things over a larger base, and that's my approach. Rather than trying to catch that imaginary auto factory to bring 1,000 jobs to Thunder Bay, we need to do it incrementally by adding those additional people, those additional homes, which in turn will trigger additional small businesses, and all of those will pay property taxes, and that will help share the burden of the very expensive cost of running a city this size in the middle of nowhere.
Looking at the small businesses specifically, what role do you think council should have in making Thunder Bay have a more welcoming business climate?
In some ways, it's keep out of their way. But having said that, there are a number of regulations that have to be adhered to. And certainly we have not, as a council, in my 15 years, done anything to block the development of small businesses. In fact, if anything, the development that we've done at the waterfront has really stimulated the growth of the entrepreneurial sector in the North Core and spilling over to Bay and Algoma. So by those strategic infrastructure investments, we facilitate the attractiveness of particular areas. We need to do the same thing in the South Core, so that there's identified opportunities for entrepreneurs to come in and open up new shops, new services, what have you.
Like you said, it was the development of the waterfront that played a big role in spurring a lot of that North Core development. What kind of opportunity could exist in the South Core for a similar revitalization?
One of the failures of both the Port Arthur and Fort William urban renewal programs was they never completed them. The part they didn't complete was housing. Yes, we had some social housing that was developed, primarily seniors in those two cores, but the reality is we need mixed housing and extensive development, because that's what will provide the clientele for the retail outlets, for the services that are offered, restaurants, bars, what have you. And by concentrating on working with developers to find ways in which to take existing city-owned land that we own in the South Core and offer it to the marketplace for the construction of mixed housing, so a good range of incomes within the building, that will help that core, in part because when you have more people down there, it's less attractive to the more marginalized who are on the street. Now, they will move elsewhere, and we will have to continue to deal with that. But in the short term, for the South Core in particular, that's one tool that we have. We thought that the courthouse would do that. It's done it a little bit, but nowhere near what we thought would occur, and so we need to move on.
Iain, when you announced your candidacy, you said that you only intended to serve one term. Is that still the case, and why did you make that declaration?
It is still the case, although certainly my friends are saying, are you kidding? Why would you make that commitment now? I think that 4 years at this point in time is enough to allow the newcomers on council and the more established members on council, and I'm not prejudging the results of the election, but we will have a mix of returnees and new members to get their feet wet, to understand the process and be ready to put their names forward for mayor 4 years from now. I'm quite prepared to end my career at that point. Now, circumstances may change, and you know, in politics you should never say never, but certainly my intent right now is that it's a one term. I think I can do a lot within that term, and I think that the new members of council will have an opportunity to position themselves to run for mayor to lead this community at that point in time.
Iain, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Find the candidate profiles for everybody else in the mayor's race, as well as all of the ward and at-large contests at the Thunder Bay Vote section of tbnewswatch.com.